While most of the world was distracted by holiday sales, football playoffs, or the latest political drama, China quietly launched a financial earthquake. No fanfare, no headlines splashed across the front pages, just a silent, calculated maneuver that sent ripples across global markets. A $5 trillion wealth shift. Yes, $5 trillion. That's not just a number, it's the lifeblood of the global economy. And now, it's moving, silently but powerfully, away from the US dollar. Most people won't even notice. They'll go on with their daily lives, oblivious to the tectonic shift happening around them. But the consequences will be felt everywhere, from the price of your groceries to the value of your savings account. This isn't just about China changing its monetary policy. This is about China weaponizing money itself to dismantle the dollar's supremacy. And if you think this is just some distant geopolitical spat, think again. What's happening now will impact every single person who holds, earns, or saves in dollars. For decades, the US dollar has been the undisputed king of global finance. It's the reserve currency that powers trade, settles debts, and provides stability. Oil, priced in dollars. International loans, dollar denominated. Countries like Brazil and India, they hold dollar reserves as a safety net against economic shocks. And why wouldn't they? The dollar has been the ultimate safe haven, backed by the world's largest economy and strongest military. But here's the thing about empires. They don't last forever. Rome fell, Britain fell, and now the dollar, the cornerstone of America's financial empire, is under siege. The attacker? China. In December 2025, while markets in New York and London were closed for the holidays, China dropped a bombshell. For the first time in 14 years, Beijing abandoned its cautious monetary policy. No press conferences, no dramatic announcements, just cold, calculated moves. They introduced two revolutionary tools, the securities fund and insurance swap facilities. Now, these might sound like boring financial jargon, but trust me, they're anything but. These tools are designed to flood liquidity into specific sectors, prop up assets, and lock in wealth, all before the world wakes up. Imagine it like this. While everyone else is playing checkers, China is playing chess at a level no one can match. They're not just tweaking interest rates or printing money. They're surgically redirecting capital flows, reshaping trade settlements, and fortifying their financial system, all while starving the dollar-dependent economies. But that's not all. China didn't just stop at monetary policy. They slammed the door on capital outflows, tightening annual limits on wealth leaving the country. No more billionaires smuggling their fortunes offshore. No more capital flight draining their reserves. Instead, they're keeping that $5 trillion circulating inside their own economy, fueling their industries, not ours. And if you think this is just about domestic policy, think again. This $5 trillion wealth shift is part of a broader war on dollar supremacy. Because here's the kicker. China isn't just isolating its economy, they're building an alternative system, one designed to bypass the dollar entirely. Enter the digital yuan, or ECNY. Since its launch in 2023, the digital yuan has exploded in popularity. By the end of 2025, its transaction volume hit $2.3 trillion, a staggering 800% increase in just 2 years. And this isn't just some gimmick. The ECNY is a game changer. It settles instantly, crosses borders without the need for US banks, and dodges sanctions with ease. Think about what that means. For decades, the dollar has had a chokehold on global trade. If you wanted to buy oil, you needed dollars. If you wanted to settle international debt, you needed dollars. But now, countries like Russia, Iran, and even South Africa are turning to the ECNY. Why? Because it's faster, or cheaper, and immune to the political strings attached to the dollar. This isn't a minor shift. It's a revolution. The global south, including BRICS nations, Southeast Asia, and parts of Africa, are piling into this alternative system. They're tired of being at the mercy of the Federal Reserve. They're tired of US sanctions dictating their trade policies. And China is giving them an escape route. But wait, it gets even bigger. While the digital yuan is dismantling the dollar's dominance in trade, China is simultaneously launching an attack on commodities. Fast forward to early 2026, and China pulls a ninja move on silver exports. Supply freezes, prices skyrocket, and suddenly the global market is in chaos. Why silver? Because China controls massive refining capacity, and when they tighten supply, it's not random, it's strategic. Silver isn't just a shiny metal, it's a critical component in industrial production, electronics, and solar panels. By squeezing supply, China isn't just creating price volatility, they're sending a signal. We're done playing by your rules. When silver prices spike, it exposes cracks in the paper versus physical market. Banks have been trading silver derivatives, essentially promises of metal they don't actually have. It's like a Jenga tower built on promises, and China just yanked out the bottom block. Confidence cracks, and suddenly the stress spills over into gold, commodities, bonds, and even equities. Now, connect the dots. This isn't just about silver or the digital yuan. This is about China systematically dismantling the pillars of dollar supremacy. And the $5 trillion wealth shift is the culmination of years of planning. For decades, skeptics have argued that the dollar is unbeatable. After all, the US GDP dwarfs China's $30 trillion versus $19 trillion. The yuan only accounts for 2% of global reserves, and America's deep financial markets and independent central bank have preserved purchasing power better than most. But here's the thing. Trust is eroding. The Federal Reserve's relentless money printing, the skyrocketing national debt, and political instability have shaken confidence in the dollar. Meanwhile, China is playing the long game, building alliances in the global south, digitizing money and weaponizing commodities. The $5 trillion wealth shift isn't just a financial move, it's a war. And the battlefield is the global economy. This isn't just a geopolitical rivalry, it's a full-scale economic revolution. And the scariest part? Most Americans have no idea it's happening. The $5 trillion wealth shift isn't just about draining liquidity out of U.S. markets. It's about re-engineering the global financial system to make the dollar irrelevant. For decades, the dollar's dominance has relied on two pillars: trust and necessity. Trust because the world believed the U.S. could responsibly manage its currency. Necessity because the dollar was the universal medium for trade and investment. China is attacking both pillars simultaneously, and their strategy is unfolding in ways that are both subtle and devastating. Trust is the currency of currencies. Without it, the dollar is just paper. And right now, America's trust deficit is growing faster than its national debt, which, by the way, just crossed $36 trillion. Think about what that means. Every second, America borrows $50,000. Every day, $4.2 billion is added to the tab. By 2026, interest payments alone will hit $900 billion annually, surpassing the defense budget. The Federal Reserve isn't just borrowing to keep the government running. It's printing money at an unprecedented rate. Since 2008, the Fed's balance sheet has ballooned from $900 billion to over $9 trillion. That's a tenfold increase in just 18 years. This isn't sustainable, and the world knows it. Foreign investors who once snapped up U.S. treasuries like hotcakes are now quietly reducing their holdings. China, once America's biggest creditor, has slashed its treasury holdings to the lowest level in 14 years. Japan, the second largest holder, is following suit. The message is clear. The world no longer trusts America to manage its currency responsibly. And that lack of trust is a fatal blow to the dollar's status as the global reserve currency. For decades, the dollar has been the backbone of global trade. Oil, gas, metals, food, everything was priced in dollars. But necessity is a fragile thing. It only lasts as long as there's no viable alternative. China is building that alternative, and they're doing it faster than anyone expected. The digital yuan, or ECNY, is at the heart of this strategy. Unlike traditional currencies, the digital yuan isn't just a medium of exchange. It's a tool of geopolitical power. It settles transactions instantly, bypasses the SWIFT system, and operates outside the reach of U.S. sanctions. Countries that have been punished by U.S. sanctions, Russia, Iran, Venezuela, are flocking to the digital yuan. And it's not just rogue states. Major economies like Brazil and South Africa are exploring the ECNY as a way to diversify their trade settlements. This is where the $5 trillion wealth shift becomes critical. By keeping that capital inside its borders, China is fortifying its economy against external shocks and building the infrastructure for a dollar-free trade system. They're not just playing defense, they're going on offense. For decades, the petrodollar system has been the cornerstone of America's economic empire. The deal was simple. The U.S. provides military protection to oil-producing nations like Saudi Arabia, and in return, those nations price their oil in dollars. This created an endless demand for dollars, allowing America to borrow and spend without worrying about inflation. China is dismantling this system piece by piece. In 2024, Beijing struck a landmark deal with Saudi Arabia to settle oil trades in yuan. It wasn't just a symbolic move, it was a direct attack on the petrodollar. Since then, other oil-producing nations have followed suit. Russia, Iran, and even Brazil have started pricing their oil in yuan. This isn't just about diversifying trade, it's about breaking the dollar's monopoly on global energy markets. Here's the scary part. Once the petrodollar collapses, the demand for dollars will plummet. And when demand falls, so does the dollar's value. Americans will feel the pain immediately. Skyrocketing prices for imports, higher interest rates, and a weaker economy overall. China isn't just targeting oil, they're going after commodities as a whole. In 2025, Beijing announced a series of export restrictions on rare earth metals, a move that sent shockwaves through global markets. Rare earths are critical for everything from smartphones to electric vehicles to military equipment, and China controls over 70% of the global supply. By restricting exports, China isn't just creating scarcity, they're forcing manufacturers to relocate to China or pay exorbitant premiums. This isn't just an economic move, it's a geopolitical weapon. By controlling the flow of critical commodities, China is tightening its grip on global trade and weakening America's industrial base. America's financial empire has relied on the loyalty of its allies. Europe, Japan, South Korea, all these nations have supported the dollar system because it benefited them, but that loyalty is fading. In 2025, the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, announced the creation of a new international currency to settle trade. This currency, backed by a basket of commodities, is designed to bypass the dollar entirely. It's not just talk. Trade between BRICS nations has surged, with more transactions being settled in local currencies, or the digital yuan. Even traditional U.S. allies are hedging their bets. In 2026, Germany signed a deal with China to settle trade in yuan, marking a significant shift in Europe's financial alignments. The message is clear. The world is tired of being dependent on the dollar, and China is offering them a way out. So, what does all this mean for the average American? The $5 trillion wealth shift isn't just an abstract geopolitical event. It will have real, tangible consequences for your everyday life. As the dollar loses its dominance, its value will decline. Imports will become more expensive, from electronics to food to fuel. Inflation will rise, eroding the purchasing power of your savings. Interest rates will spike, making it harder to buy a home or start a business. But perhaps the most alarming consequence is the loss of economic security. For decades, the dollar's dominance has allowed America to borrow and spend without consequences. Once that privilege disappears, the U.S. will face the same challenges as any other nation, balancing budgets, controlling inflation, and managing debt. The $5 trillion wealth shift isn't just about China's rise, it's about America's decline. And unless we wake up to the reality of this silent war, the consequences will be irreversible. The silent war China is waging, not just against the dollar, but against the very foundation of America's economic empire. The $5 trillion wealth shift isn't just a game of numbers or a financial strategy. It's a calculated attack on America's ability to project power globally. And the scariest part? The United States seems oblivious to the scale of the threat. Right now, China isn't just dismantling the dollar's supremacy. It's rewriting the rules of the global economy. And the ripple effects will hit every corner of the world, reshaping markets, alliances, and everyday life for billions of people. One of the most overlooked aspects of China's silent war is its use of technology. While the United States debates regulations for cryptocurrency and blockchain, China is weaponizing these technologies to bypass the dollar system entirely. Take the digital yuan as an example. It's not just a currency, it's a platform. Built on blockchain architecture, the ECNY allows instant, borderless transactions without relying on Western financial institutions like SWIFT. This means countries can trade with China without ever touching dollars or US banks. But China isn't stopping at the digital yuan. They're investing billions into blockchain-based trade networks that connect partners across Asia, Africa, and Latin America. These networks are designed to decentralize global finance, cutting out intermediaries like the Federal Reserve and Wall Street. Think about what that means. For decades, America's financial empire has relied on its central role in global trade. Every transaction, every loan, every deal flowed through U.S. institutions, creating endless demand for dollars. Blockchain flips that model on its head, allowing countries to bypass the U.S. entirely. And the results are already visible. In 2026, trade between China and Africa hit a record $400 billion, with more than half of the transactions settled in yuan or local currencies. This isn't just a financial shift. It's a geopolitical revolution. Let's talk about gold. For centuries, gold has been the ultimate store of value, the foundation of trust in money. And while the world moved away from the gold standard in the 1970s, China never fully abandoned it. Over the past decade, China has quietly stockpiled gold reserves, surpassing 3,000 metric tons by the end of 2025. This isn't just a hedge against inflation, it's a signal of intent. By backing the yuan with gold, China is creating a currency that's immune to the inflationary pressures plaguing the dollar. But here's where it gets interesting. In 2026, China announced a new initiative to settle oil and commodity trades in yuan backed by gold. This move immediately attracted interest from countries like Russia, Iran, and Venezuela, all of whom are eager to escape the dollar's grip. The implications are staggering. If the yuan becomes the preferred currency for trading commodities, the demand for dollars will collapse. And when demand collapses, so does value. This isn't just speculation, it's already happening. In January 2026, Saudi Arabia settled a major oil shipment to China in yuan, marking the first time in decades that the petrodollar wasn't the standard. While the United States has been focused on internal political divisions, China has been building alliances across the global south. And these alliances are united by one common goal: breaking free from the dollar system. In 2024, the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, announced plans to create a new international currency backed by a basket of commodities. By 2026, those plans have materialized, with pilot programs already underway in bilateral trade agreements. But it's not just BRICS. Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and parts of Africa are joining the movement, creating regional trade networks designed to bypass the U.S. financial system entirely. This isn't just about economics, it's about sovereignty. For decades, countries in the global south have been at the mercy of U.S. sanctions, interest rates, and trade policies. The dollar system gave America unparalleled leverage, allowing it to dictate terms to nations around the world. China is offering them an alternative, and the response has been overwhelming. Now, here's the most chilling part of this story. America isn't paying attention. While China is systematically dismantling the dollar's dominance, U.S. policymakers are distracted by partisan bickering, short-term election cycles, and outdated strategies. Consider this. In 2026, the U.S. government is projected to spend more on interest payments than on infrastructure, education, and research combined. Meanwhile, China is pouring billions into new technologies, trade networks, and alliances. The warning signs are everywhere. Foreign holdings of U.S. treasuries are declining. Trade in yuan is surging. And America's debt is spiraling out of control. But instead of addressing these challenges, the U.S. is doubling down on military spending, political infighting, and short-term fixes. It's the classic empire trap: overextend, overspend, and ignore the rot within. So, what happens next? If China succeeds in dethroning the dollar, the consequences will be felt everywhere, from Wall Street to Main Street. First, inflation will skyrocket. As demand for dollars collapses, its value will plummet, driving up the cost of imports. Everyday goods, food, electronics, fuel will become more expensive, squeezing household budgets. Second, interest rates will rise. Without the dollar's reserve currency status, America will struggle to borrow cheaply. Mortgage rates, credit card rates, and business loans will all become more expensive, a slowing economic growth. Third, geopolitical power will shift. Without the dollar's dominance, America's ability to impose sanctions or influence global trade will diminish. Countries will turn to China, creating a new world order centered around Beijing instead of Washington. And finally, social divisions will deepen. As the economic fallout spreads, inequality will worsen, political tensions will rise, and trust in institutions will erode. This isn't just a financial collapse, it's a systemic crisis. The $5 trillion wealth shift isn't just about China's rise, it's about America's decline. The warning signs are clear, the patterns are undeniable, and the consequences are inevitable. But here's the thing about history: it doesn't have to repeat itself. Empires don't collapse because they're destined to fail. They collapse because they ignore the warning signs, refuse to adapt, and cling to outdated systems. America is at a crossroads. Will we learn from history, or will we fall into the empire trap? The choice is ours, but the time to act is now. If you found this breakdown eye-opening, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Understanding these global shifts isn't just about staying informed, it's about preparing for the future. Together, let's navigate the silent war and build a better tomorrow.